Welcome back to the non-dual lectionary. This week's gospel lesson is for year C, the first Sunday of Lent. And the lesson is Luke chapter 4, verses 1 through 13, the testing of Jesus. Now, this immediately follows the baptism story of Jesus, which we talked about a few weeks ago. Um, I think is sort of clearly an awakening story that we would put in the language of uh, of non-dual realization, sort of that recognition of true nature beyond egoic self. And immediately after this, after that experience in the story, is this next part of the story. Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit in the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tested by the devil. He ate nothing at all during those days, and when they were over, he was famished. The devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become a loaf of bread." Jesus answered him, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone." Then the devil led him up and showed him in an instant all the kingdoms of the world. And the devil said to him, "To you I will give all this authority and their glory, for it has been given over to me, and I give it to anyone I please. If you then will worship me, it will all be yours." Jesus answered him, "It is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil led him to Jerusalem and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you to protect you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "It is said, do not put the Lord your God to the test." When the devil had finished every test, he departed from him until an opportune time. So I think we've got another good one here. And Adyashanti, in his book Resurrecting Jesus, talks directly about this, and I think his commentary is spot on. So I'm going to give a little bit of my own spin, but a lot of this is built off of what he writes there. So first, again, this is immediately after this awakening experience, and I think this is a mythological telling of a common, and by here I don't mean frequent, I mean a universal experience that um, following that awakening experience. And it doesn't have to happen immediately or anytime. But the world here and the devil here, I want to talk about that. But the world will deliver to us tests. And tests here don't have to mean like, oh, are you really awakened or not? There's a little bit of that to it, but it's more like, are you really going to live this out or not? Um, you can have the realization, you can have the recognition, but where are you going to now draw your draw your being from, draw your motivation from, draw yourself from. Where are you going to be rooted in? Is it going to be more still in that egoic self with now this nice realization recognition layered on top, sort of a spiritual self? Or is it really going to sink in? Is it really going to be true nature, no self, um, bigger than all of this? And again, I think, the devil here, I think just really represents the world, the universe, what will be presented to everyone. Um, and so Jesus is led into the wilderness and he ate nothing at all. And the first test then comes. The devil says, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become a loaf of bread." And one way of reading that is this is the core like survival instinct, security, survival instinct, right? Um, is your true nature is your manifestation, is your realization of true nature so strong that you root in that even more than in the survival instinct? And that can seem like too much, right? Like, oh no, you can't do that because, of course, your survival instinct. There's nothing contrary. There's nothing in opposition about having awakening, having a recognition of no self that's contrary to the survival instinct, and that's true. Um, But the small self sense of what it needs to survive can lead to that clinging and grabbing that takes over and that clouds our recognition of true nature. Um, and it can seem in opposition, right? It can seem in opposition from the perspective of our small egoic self. So this apparent decision is presented, right? Are you going to be famished? Are you going to potentially lose your life here uh, because of your devotion to true nature? And Jesus says, yes, I will. And that's not so, I mean, again, the examples that are always given of like something stronger than the survival instinct is like care for a child, right? Like we would give up our lives for our child presented with that choice. Many of us would. And yeah, so here it's not that this is like something pie in the sky. Um, it's really, present right in front of you. Are you going to sacrifice your recognition, your manifestation, your rootedness in true nature for what feels like what your small self needs? And Jesus says no. And that's a test that we will face, right? All of us have to face, if only on our deathbed. But if we have that awakening recognition, it may come before. And then the next one, the devil led him up and showed him all the kingdoms of the world, says, if you'll worship me, I'll give this all to you, right? There's a sense here of, um, and Adyashanti talks about power here, right? Like the sense of you can control everything, right? I like to shift it a little bit because it's more like a sense of, what motivates the small self to get into this whole process in the begin in the beginning, right? What is it? And we can talk about that too. Does the motivation really come from something deeper? But the small self, can be devoted to the spiritual practice, right? And one of the things it wants to do is expand and connect with everything, right? It doesn't have to be a top-down controlling thing. It doesn't have to be a power in the sense of me over everything else. Um, but at the same time, eventually that has to give way, right? The sense of what I think I'm getting, my small self thinks it's getting out of this, right? And one of the things can be I'm going to have power either in that top-down sense or just in that I'm going to connect with everything. I'm going to be able to embrace everything as a person. My egoic self, am going to embrace everything. And 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 so that's what's offered next, right? What you thought you wanted all along, I'll give that to you if you will just not root in true nature. And Jesus says, no, I'm going to root in true nature even beyond that. And then the third one, um, throw yourself down from here. The angels will lift you up. You won't be harmed. And not just that, but you'll be so great, right? Your greatness here is something that you can put in front of everyone. And um, um, something about we're on the pinnacle of the temple, right? So the angels will protect you, and you won't be harmed, um and show us your greatness, right? Show us how wonderful you are, and everyone will know then, right? And again, so you can call this something like self-importance, right? Or self-satisfaction in the smaller sense. But again, we can make it into something bigger, and it doesn't even have to sound bad. It can be something like self satisfaction, self-fulfillment. But again, Jesus says, no, I'm rooted in true nature even beyond that. Anything that you offer my small self as a consolation is not good enough. And that's what really all of this is. Anything that you offer as a consolation for not being rooted in true nature, for a self as opposed to no self, rather than beyond self and no self. I am saying no. True, I am rooted beyond that. The non-dual, my non-dual nature, right? Not just non-dual recognition, because that can be the awakening experience itself, right? Not just non-dual aim, but my non-dual nature is stronger and rooted more than that. And again, this is a mythological telling, but we're all given those tests constantly, being asked constantly, are you rooted in this above all else? Are you rooted in this above all else? And the answers will, those answers sometimes at least will often be no, right? And then we'll be asked again, come back, come back, come back. So just a beautiful, again, I mean, just an amazing mythological telling of of the story that we're all facing, right? The journey that we all take. And whether it's a conscious journey that we take through a meditative practice, through contemplative life, whether it's like a lightning bolt thrown onto us, right? That some people walking down the street can be hit with that realization and then have to unpack it for their life, or whether it's on our deathbed, um, where all of that is being taken away, uh, and and at that point we're being asked, okay, what are you rooted in now? Well, here's this beautiful, here's this telling, this mythological telling of of what the world throws at all of us, right? And Jesus continually comes back as a model for us, right? So here it really is like not as someone to worship separate from all of us, right? But for as an example of a mythological model of what everyday life is. Jesus saying, "No, I'm rooted in what is, and this is what is for all of us, and what is and what will be for all our lives."